It began with laughter, the kind that cuts sharper than any blade. It rippled through the gilded ballroom of Lady Pembroke's mansion, disguised beneath polite coughs and fluttering fans, but its cruelty was unmistakable. The orchestra played on, yet the sound of strings could not drown the sting of mockery that followed Lady Eliza Harcourt as she stood beneath the chandeliers, the full weight of 100 glittering eyes upon her. Only moments ago she had been smiling, her gloved hand poised upon the arm of Mr. Talbot, a baron's son of moderate fortune who had once sworn admiration for her grace. Now, his expression was cold, his voice trembling not from shame but from cowardice. "Forgive me, Lady Harcourt," he stammered, bowing stiffly, "but my mother insists, I cannot, our acquaintance must end." The words hung in the air like a sentence passed before an audience hungry for spectacle. Eliza felt her pulse throb in her temples, yet she did not falter. Around her, silk rustled, pearls trembled against pale throats. Someone whispered, "The Viscount's daughter, of course. Her father's debts still haunt her." Another murmured, "And she dares attend the Pembroke ball? How brazen!" Eliza inclined her head with the composure of a queen dismissed by a servant. "Then I wish you joy, Mr. Talbot," she said softly, every syllable a thread of control. "May you find a lady less burdened by the misfortune of honesty." She turned away before he could reply, her face serene though her throat burned. The humiliation was exquisite in its precision. It was not the rejection that wounded, she had long ceased to hope for kindness, but the ripple of delight that passed through the crowd at her expense. In the years since her father's ruin and death, London society had transformed her into a cautionary tale, a beautiful woman tainted by scandal, a name unfit to adorn any titled household. Yet she endured, because what else could she do? She had learned to move through their world as one might through a storm, head high, steps careful, eyes fixed ahead until the thunder passed. She crossed the ballroom now, her powder-blue gown trailing like moonlight across the polished floor. Servants opened doors, chandeliers blazed overhead, and still the whispers followed, each one a needle in the fabric of her resolve. At the far end of the hall, beside a marble column, a tall man watched her with the calm detachment of one accustomed to command. Alexander Lennox, Duke of Wexford, the soldier-turned-statesman, hero of Waterloo, and rumored favorite of the Prince Regent himself. His uniform had been replaced by severe evening black, yet something martial lingered in his bearing. His eyes, a cool gray beneath dark lashes, held none of the mockery that filled the room. He regarded her not as spectacle, but as question. Eliza met his gaze for only a heartbeat before lowering hers, uncertain whether to feel gratitude or irritation. She had no patience for pity, least of all from men who could afford to indulge it. Still, his attention unsettled her. It was said that Wexford was a man of iron principles, aloof even among his peers. Why, then, should he look upon her with such deliberate curiosity? The orchestra shifted to a waltz, and couples flooded the floor, swirling in perfect symmetry beneath the golden glow. Eliza retreated to the edge of the room, feigning composure as she accepted a glass of champagne from a passing footman. The bubbles hissed faintly, mocking her stillness. Her reflection flickered in the mirrored wall opposite, composed, elegant, untouchable. She had mastered that illusion well. But beneath the mask, her heart beat with the quiet fury of a woman cornered by circumstance. From across the hall, Lady Pembroke's shrill laughter pierced the air. "Oh, my dear, surely you heard. Poor Lady Harcourt's dance card has emptied itself." A wave of amusement followed. Eliza closed her eyes for a moment, willing herself not to react. Let them have their sport. Tomorrow they would find another victim. She had survived worse than ridicule. But then, before she could slip away, a shadow crossed her path. "Forgive my intrusion," came a low voice, measured and deep. She looked up to find the Duke of Wexford standing before her. The music did not falter, but conversation did. The air tightened. "Your Grace," she managed, inclining her head. "You mistake me for company worth addressing." "I think not," he said simply. The worth of company is often misjudged by those who have too much of it. A dangerous statement, delivered without inflection. His presence drew every gaze in the room. She could feel the tension ripple outward, the disbelief that he, of all men, would address her so openly. "I thank you for your courtesy," she replied carefully, "but I should not wish to inconvenience your reputation by conversing with one so—" "So what, my lady?" His tone was polite, but there was challenge beneath it. "So unfit," she finished, the word tasting of iron. A faint smile touched his lips. "If fitness were measured by the standards of this room," he said, glancing around at the jeweled spectators, "I might find myself equally disqualified." The remark, softly spoken yet edged with disdain, unsettled her composure. He extended his hand. "Will you dance, Lady Harcourt?" The question fell like thunder in a chapel. The violins faltered. Across the room, Lady Pembroke's fan snapped shut. 100 silent judgments flared like candles. Eliza froze, her pulse roaring in her ears. To accept would be to invite ruin, to refuse an insult to a duke. "You cannot be serious," she whispered. "I am," he said, his voice so calm it trembled her restraint. "Allow me the honor." And though reason screamed against it, something within her, perhaps pride, perhaps defiance, moved her to lay her gloved hand upon his. The music resumed, hesitant at first, then swelling as they stepped into the light. The waltz carried them through the center of the ballroom, her gown brushing against his coat with every turn. Gasps fluttered like wings. He danced with the precision of a soldier and the grace of a man unafraid of consequence. She dared not look at him, yet the steadiness of his hand at her waist steadied something wild within her. When the final note faded, silence fell once more. He released her hand, bowed slightly, and said, "Thank you, my lady." Then he turned and walked away, as though the act had cost him nothing. Eliza remained motionless, aware of the stares, the whispers that burst anew. But beneath their noise, a curious quiet settled in her chest, not peace, exactly, but the echo of something daring. She had been humiliated, yes, yet not broken. The Duke's gesture had not erased her shame, but it had shifted it, transformed it into something else, a question that the whole of London would now ask. As the crowd parted, Lady Pembroke's voice hissed from behind her fan. "He will regret it by morning." Perhaps he would. But as Eliza walked toward the doors, her spine straight and her chin unbowed, she felt, for the first time in years, the faint, perilous thrill of being seen. And somewhere in the corner, unseen by all but the shadows, the Duke of Wexford watched her leave, the ghost of a smile flickering across his face. It began with ink, the cruelest weapon in London. By dawn, every breakfast table from Mayfair to Belgravia bore the scandal in fresh black print. "The Duke of Wexford dances with ruin." Beneath the bold headline sprawled a merciless caricature, Eliza Harcourt, her figure exaggerated into mockery, clasping the Duke's arm as he gazed upon her with absurd devotion. Her father's debts were resurrected in prose sharper than daggers, her virtue dissected by pens that fed upon humiliation. By noon, the pamphlet had found its way into drawing-rooms, gentlemen's clubs, and servants' halls alike. The tongue devoured it, savoring each cruel detail. Eliza read it once, standing by her window as pale winter light seeped through lace curtains. She did not weep. Tears had long ago become a luxury she could not afford. The caricature was folded neatly and placed upon her writing desk, beside a wilted vase of roses. She regarded it as one might a death notice. It confirmed what she had always known. In society's eyes, she was not merely unworthy, she was entertainment. Her aunt, Mrs. Linden, paced the parlor with fretful hands. "You must not be seen, Eliza. Not for a fortnight at least. The gossip will cool, it always does." Eliza's voice was quiet. "I was seen, Aunt. That is the problem. You provoke them with your stubborn pride. A quiet woman might have survived her father's ruin. But you, good heavens, you must insist upon dignity." Eliza smiled faintly. If I surrender that, what remains? The doorbell chimed. Mrs. Linden startled, as though scandal itself had come knocking. The maid returned moments later with a parcel, small, wrapped in cream paper, sealed with black wax. No sender's name. Only the imprint of a hawk with spread wings. Eliza's fingers trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside lay a silver locket, delicate yet unmistakably fine. On its face, a single word engraved in Latin, Virtus, courage. Within, a folded note in an unfamiliar, precise hand. 4 words only, for courage, not charity. Eliza closed her eyes. Wexford. It was both comfort and insult, that gift. Comfort, because someone had remembered her humanity amid mockery. Insult, because it suggested she needed rescue. She replaced the locket in its box, unsure whether to treasure or destroy it. By evening, word of the gift had spread. Servants whispered, acquaintances speculated. The tongue delighted in the implication, a duke's pity disguised as affection. Eliza's name, once associated with disgrace, now mingled with his in every salon conversation. Invitations ceased arriving. Even her few remaining allies, kindly ladies who pitied her, found excuses not to call. 3 days later, she ventured into Hyde Park despite her aunt's protests. The sky hung low and gray, the paths slick with thawing frost. She walked with purpose, her chin high, as though daring the city to confront her. She had barely reached the Serpentine when a horse slowed beside her, hooves muffled against the damp earth. Lady Harcourt. She knew that voice. Calm, resonant, unmistakable. She turned to find the Duke astride a dark chestnut stallion, dressed in his riding coat of navy wool, his expression unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. Your Grace. She curtsied, not out of courtesy but to compose herself. You've been made the subject of cruel amusement, he said, his tone more statement than sympathy. Then I am fashionable at last, she replied lightly. London only truly accepts one once it has devoured them. He dismounted, reins in hand. You mock to survive. I understand it. You understand little of survival, she said, eyes fixed on the fog rising from the water. Men of your standing do not need to endure, they simply endure others. A pause. You wrong me, Lady Harcourt. Do I? Her voice was low, almost tremulous. You, who could silence them with a single word, why have you not? He studied her, then said softly, because I would not take from you the strength you wield so fiercely. To defend you would be to declare you helpless. Something in her chest shifted, though she masked it behind a cold smile. Then you have done me a great kindness by leaving me to my ruin. He took a step closer. You think me your enemy, when all I wish is to understand the woman who stood unflinching before a world intent on shaming her. I am not a puzzle for your curiosity, Your Grace. No, he said. You are a mirror for mine. Their eyes met, a brief, dangerous moment, and then a voice called his name from a passing carriage. 2 gentlemen raised their hats, grinning with the cruel knowingness of those who smell scandal. The Duke's jaw tightened. Eliza's spine straightened. She turned and walked away before he could speak further. By nightfall, the city had found fresh amusement. A new pamphlet appeared in Covent Garden, featuring a crude sketch of a lady beneath an umbrella, a tall man shielding her from rain. Beneath it, the caption, Virtue sheltered by valor. The meaning was clear. Her ruin was now art, her shame immortalized by ink and laughter. That night, rain fell with relentless persistence. Eliza sat by the window, watching the droplets trace the glass like slow tears. She turned the silver locket in her hand, feeling the weight of it against her palm. For courage, not charity. She whispered the words as though testing them for truth. Was it possible that his intent had been respect? Or did even respect, from such a man, wound more than it healed? Outside, carriage wheels splashed through the flooded street. A knock echoed, sharp, urgent. Her maid entered, breathless. A note, my lady. From the Duke's secretary. Eliza unfolded it. Your courage is not unnoticed. Tomorrow at Vauxhall Gardens, should you wish to walk, I will be there. A.W. She should have burned it. Every rule of prudence demanded it. Yet when morning came, she found herself drawn by curiosity, or perhaps something more perilous. Vauxhall was quiet that afternoon, its lamps unlit beneath the storm-heavy sky. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady. Her carriage wheel caught in a rut and cracked. The driver cursed, helpless. She stepped out, gathering her skirts, and there he was, waiting beneath the archway, coat darkened by rain, eyes shadowed yet intent. You should not have come, she said, though her voice betrayed her relief. Neither should you, he replied. And yet, here we stand. He offered his greatcoat, placing it gently around her shoulders. Their hands brushed. Time seemed to pause, suspended in the rhythm of falling rain. You think me arrogant, he said. Perhaps I am. But when I saw you mocked, I envied your strength. You faced cruelty with more honor than any man who fought beside me in war. Her breath caught. You compare ballroom gossip to battle? He shook his head. No. I compare your courage to survival. I have seen soldiers fall with less grace than you stand. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the rain's soft insistence. She looked away first. You mistake endurance for virtue, your grace. I endure because I must, not because I am brave. Then we are alike, he murmured. For I act because I must, not because I am noble. The words lingered, quiet as confession. When she looked up again, he was watching her with that same steady calm, yet something unguarded flickered beneath it, something that made her pulse tremble. Good evening, Your Grace, she whispered, and stepped away. He did not stop her. But as she disappeared into the mist, he reached into his pocket and touched the second locket he had commissioned that morning, engraved not with Virtus, but with her name. It began with betrayal, the kind that arrived not as thunder but as applause. The chandeliers of Ashbourne Manor blazed with 1,000 candles, and beneath their glow, every polished face smiled too widely. The Duke of Wexford's long-anticipated gathering had drawn London's finest, and among them, reluctantly persuaded by her aunt, stood Lady Eliza Harcourt, her pale blue gown trembling slightly with each breath. The invitation had come as a surprise, written in the Duke's own hand, formal, faultless, and unsigned at the close. Her aunt had declared it a chance to reclaim her standing. Eliza had recognized it as something else entirely, a test of her endurance. The murmur of conversation swelled as the Duke entered, tall and composed, his presence commanding attention as effortlessly as a flame commands shadows. His eyes swept the room once, found her, and lingered. He gave no public acknowledgment, yet the faintest flicker passed through his expression, something between relief and regret. Eliza felt the familiar ache of contradiction stir within her, admiration laced with anger. It was cruel, this fascination with a man whose kindness was both her solace and her peril. Lady Serena Ashby, exquisite and predatory in crimson silk, glided to Eliza's side with the grace of a serpent in sunlight. "My dear Lady Harcourt," she began sweetly, "how extraordinary that you should attend. I had not thought your name still admitted to such occasions." Eliza turned, her smile small and perfectly polite. "You see, Lady Serena, even scandal tires of repetition." "Oh, but some scandals never tire us," Serena murmured. "Especially those that entertain." Her gaze drifted toward the Duke. "One must admire your courage, though, to appear before him after such delicate rumors. You have the resilience of a tradesman's daughter." The barb landed. A ripple of laughter fluttered among those close enough to hear. Eliza's knuckles whitened around her fan. "Better a tradesman's daughter," she said quietly, "than a lady who trades in cruelty." Color flared high upon Serena's cheek, but before she could retaliate, the Duke's voice cut through the crowd. "Lady Serena," he said with a politeness that chills, "your wit is unmatched, though I confess I tire of its victims." He offered Eliza his arm. "Lady Harcourt, Would you join me for a turn in the conservatory? A hush followed them as they left the room, the murmur of gossip trailing like perfume. The conservatory stretched vast and still, moonlight spilling through its glass walls. The scent of night-blooming jasmine lingered heavy in the air, mingling with the soft murmur of distant rain. Eliza released a slow breath, her composure finally cracking. "You should not have done that," she said. "Defending me so publicly, it will only sharpen their tongues." "They are already sharpened," he replied. "Shall I be condemned for dulling them on your behalf?" "You think yourself gallant, your grace," she said, turning away, "but every word you speak in my defense adds weight to their mockery. They will say I have ensnared you. They will say—" He moved closer, his voice steady. "Let them say what they wish. Their words cannot unmake what I know to be true." "And what is that?" she demanded. "That you have more honor than the room we just left combined." Silence swelled between them. Her chest rose and fell with restrained emotion. The jasmine's fragrance grew almost suffocating. "Do you know," she said softly, "I have come to despise the word honor? It has never fed the hungry, nor forgiven the ruined. It is a word men use to excuse their comforts and women use to bury their pain." He regarded her for a long moment. "Then what would you have instead?" "Peace," she whispered. "A day without whisper or pity. A life where my name does not weigh more than my worth." Her voice faltered, and the confession slipped free before she could stop it. "I am so tired, Alexander." It was the first time she had spoken his name aloud. The sound of it between them was like a key turning in a long-locked door. He stepped closer until the faint warmth of his breath brushed her temple. "You think me untouched by weariness?" he said. "I have fought wars that left fewer scars than these drawing-rooms. Every courtesy here is a blade hidden behind a smile. I returned from battle to find civility a more deceitful enemy." She looked up then, meeting his eyes fully. "Then why endure it?" "Because I must," he said simply. "Because power is the armor one cannot remove once worn. And because—" He stopped himself, the word unsaid lingering like a pulse in the air. "Because," she prompted. "Because I cannot look upon you and remain unmoved." The admission landed softly, yet its weight was immense. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. The moment stretched, fragile as glass, and then she stepped back, shaking her head. "You speak kindly now," she said. "But affection cannot survive in a world that thrives on cruelty. Tomorrow they will twist your chivalry into folly, and I shall become the proof of your ruin." "If ruin is the price of truth," he said, "then I will pay it gladly." Her eyes glistened, though no tears fell. "You cannot mean that." He smiled faintly, a soldier's weary smile. "You doubt too much. Perhaps I have spent too long among those who mistake indifference for wisdom." She turned toward the window, where rain traced the glass in trembling lines. The moonlight caught the curve of her neck, and for a fleeting second he thought of what peace might look like if it bore her face. "Alexander," she said quietly, "there is no victory in defying society. Only exile. Then let us be exiles together." She turned sharply, startled by the intensity beneath his calm. "You would throw away your title, your alliances, your future, for what? For a woman whose name is spoken in jest. For a woman whose courage silences jesters," he replied. Her breath broke on a quiet laugh, half disbelief, half sorrow. "You speak of me as if I were some noble cause. But I am only a woman trying not to drown." "Then allow me," he said, "to be the shore upon which you rest." The words were reckless, beautiful, and utterly impossible. She looked at him then, not as the Duke of Wexford, not as her defender, but as a man who had unknowingly crossed the line between propriety and desire. For a moment, the world outside the glass seemed to vanish. Only the scent of jasmine, the echo of rain, and the nearness of something dangerous remained. He reached for her hand, but she withdrew it before contact. "Do not," she whispered. "If you touch me now, I shall never recover." He held still, the space between them alive with what could not be spoken. Then, from the doorway, came the faint rustle of silk. Lady Serena stood framed against the light of the ballroom, her expression pale with fury and triumph. She had seen everything, or enough to destroy them both. Eliza's face drained of color. The Duke straightened, the mask of command falling swiftly back into place. "Your Grace," Serena said, her tone dripping with false sweetness, "how romantic the night air must be to draw you here." Her eyes flicked toward Eliza. "Or perhaps it is the company." Eliza's hand clenched at her side. "It is not what you think." Serena smiled. "Oh, my dear, I think precisely what they will." And as she glided away, her laughter echoing faintly down the corridor, Eliza knew the war they had both feared had begun. Not the kind fought with swords, but the one waged in whispers, where the casualties were reputations and hearts alike. It began with silence, the heavy kind that falls before the blow that cannot be undone. The morning after the Duke's gathering, London stirred with a hunger only scandal could feed. By noon, the whispers had escaped the confines of parlors and found their way into drawing-rooms, carriages, and clubs. The Duke of Wexford compromised a fallen lady in his own house. The tale grew with every retelling. A moonlit tryst, a touch too intimate, a kiss that may or may not have happened. And always her name, Lady Eliza Harcourt, spoken like a curse or a confession. In the quiet of her aunt's townhouse, Eliza sat unmoving as her aunt paced furiously before the hearth. "You have destroyed us," Lady Pembridge hissed. "Do you comprehend that? Destroyed. Your name will not recover from this. The Duke's gallantry cannot save you, his silence will damn you." Eliza said nothing. Her hands, clasped too tightly, trembled in her lap. The truth was a fragile thing, useless against rumor. What Serena had seen, what she had chosen to imagine, now lived larger than any defense could touch. Lady Pembridge halted, breathless. "You will leave London at once. Tonight. The carriage will take you to Devon, to your cousin's estate. No letters. No explanations. This will fade, if you vanish with dignity." Eliza rose slowly. "And what of dignity, Aunt, when it has already been stripped from me?" Her aunt's eyes flashed. "You will not speak to me in that tone. You brought this upon yourself." "No," Eliza said softly. "It was brought upon me." But defiance, even quiet, was wasted. Within the hour, the servants were given orders, trunks were packed, and the once vivid world of London dimmed behind her carriage window. Rain traced blurred lines down the glass as she watched the city dissolve into fields. The rhythm of the wheels echoed her heart, steady, relentless, and breaking. Meanwhile, at Wexford House, the Duke stood before his study window, jaw clenched as he read the morning papers. His name was not spared. "The Duke and the disgraced lady," proclaimed one. Another, more venomous, hinted at an engagement forced by honor or convenience. He crushed the page in his fist. "Your Grace," came a voice from the doorway. It was his steward, pale and hesitant. "Her ladyship, Lady Serena, requests an audience." "Tell her no. She insists it concerns Lady Harcourt." That name, spoken aloud, cut through him like glass. He turned. "Send her in." Serena entered with all the poise of a victor concealing her crown. "Alexander," she began sweetly, "you look unwell. A pity, after such an enchanting evening." "Speak your purpose," he said flatly. Her lips curved. "You should thank me. Had I not intervened, your reputation might have sunk beyond repair. I have spoken with several of our mutual acquaintances, people who can shape the story favorably." "Favorably?" he repeated, his voice low. "At the cost of whose honor?" "Oh, come now," she laughed softly. "A woman like her should never have lingered near your circle. She was always bound for ruin. I merely hastened what society would have done in time." He stepped forward, the air between them tightening. "You spread the tale." "I guided it," she corrected, "so that you might not fall with her. There are those who suggest you should marry her to end the scandal. Imagine what that would do to your standing." But if she is painted as the seductress, you remain the wronged party. Noble. Merciful. His silence was thunderous. Then, slowly, he said, "You are mistaken, Serena. It is not mercy I seek, it is truth." Her laughter faltered. "Truth will not save you. Then I will let it destroy me." Her face changed, shock first, then something darker. "You cannot mean, Alexander, you would sacrifice everything for her?" "I already have." He left her standing in the quiet fury of her own defeat, and by nightfall, his carriage was bound for Devon. The journey stretched through storm and silence. When he arrived, mud splattered his coat, and exhaustion lined his face. Eliza was in the garden despite the cold, her shawl drawn tightly around her. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, disbelief freezing her breath. "You should not be here," she said. "I should have been sooner. You cannot imagine what they are saying." "I have read every word," he said. "And none of it changes what I know of you." Her composure wavered. "You think to mend this by defying them? You'll lose your title, your influence." "Let them strip it from me," he interrupted. "Titles are hollow if they cannot protect what is true." She looked at him then, really looked, saw the exhaustion, the conviction, the quiet ruin he carried willingly for her. "Why?" she whispered. "Why fight for what cannot be saved?" "Because you are not the tragedy they wish to make of you." The word struck deeper than any embrace. Her throat tightened. "And what if I am? Then I will bear the sorrow beside you." For a long moment neither moved. The garden wind whispered through dying leaves, scattering them at their feet like spent petals. Something in her, some long-caged hope, stirred and broke. "You should not speak so recklessly," she said. "It is not recklessness," he answered. "It is love." The confession hung between them, fragile and irreversible. She turned away, tears glinting faintly. "You should not have said it. I had no choice." She faced him then, her expression a storm of fear and longing. "Do you understand what you've done? You have given them your ruin in writing. They will not forgive you, Alexander. They will not forget. I do not ask their forgiveness." He took a step closer. "Only yours." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain once more. Somewhere within the house, a servant's hurried footsteps approached, the sound of news, urgent and unwanted. A breath later, Lady Pembridge appeared in the doorway, pale and trembling. "Your Grace," she said, voice shaking, "you must come at once. There's been a decree. The Queen herself has taken notice of the scandal. A summons has been issued." Eliza's heart stopped. "A summons? For the Duke and for you," her aunt whispered. "To appear before the court." The Duke's jaw set. "Then we shall go." "No," Eliza said sharply. "You cannot. If you stand beside me there, they will destroy you completely." "They already have," he said softly. "But I will not let them destroy you alone." The clock in the hall struck midnight, 12 solemn tolls that seemed to seal their fate. Outside, the storm broke open, rain thrashing against the windows like applause for the inevitable. Eliza's hand rose to her chest, where her heart beat wild and terrified. "Then this is the end," she whispered. He reached for her, not to claim but to steady, his voice low and certain. "No, Eliza. This is where it begins." And as lightning flared beyond the glass, illuminating their faces in its fleeting glow, the sound of distant hooves approached, the messenger of a destiny neither could escape. The sound of the great clock striking echoed like a tolling bell across the marble halls of St. James's Palace. The hour of reckoning had arrived. Outside, London's streets pulsed with murmurs and the rattle of carriage wheels, crowds drawn by scandal's scent, eager to witness the downfall of a duke and a disgraced lady. Inside, the air was taut, gilded with dread and candlelight. Beneath the painted ceilings of kings and conquerors, Lady Eliza Harcourt stood waiting, unadorned, unguarded, and terribly still. The summons had been swift, merciless. Word of her supposed impropriety had reached the crown, and the Queen herself demanded a hearing. To preserve the sanctity of the peerage, she had said. To separate truth from corruption. Yet Eliza knew that no truth mattered to those who had already chosen their villain. The glittering court was a theatre, and she its condemned heroine. When the great doors opened, the Duke of Wexford entered, his presence silencing even the whispers. His uniform was dark, his expression darker still, as if the battlefields of Waterloo had returned to haunt his eyes. He bowed before the throne with grave precision, then turned to her. Their gazes met, one heartbeat of understanding in a sea of judgment. The Chamberlain's voice rang out, rehearsed and cruel. Lady Eliza Harcourt, accused of conduct unbecoming, and His Grace Alexander Wexford, for engaging in acts that bring scandal upon the crown and nobility. Eliza's pulse thundered in her ears. Each accusation struck like a hammer, innuendo, rumor, fragments of truth reshaped into weaponry. The Queen's face remained inscrutable, pale beneath her crown, her silence the measure of fate. When Eliza was asked to speak, her voice trembled at first, then steadied with something fierce. "Your Majesty," she said, "I will not defend myself against shadows. I have done no dishonor but to be seen in kindness by a man society deems beyond my station." A ripple of disdain coursed through the gallery. She felt it pierce her composure like needles, yet she did not bow. The Duke stepped forward before the guards could signal him. "Enough," he said, his voice deep and unyielding. "If guilt must be assigned, it is mine alone. I sought her company. I defied convention. And I would do so again." "Your Grace," came a warning from one of the councillors, "you speak at peril of your title." "Then let it perish," he replied. "A title that forbids love is no honor but a chain." Gasps swept the chamber. The Queen's eyes, sharp and ancient with wisdom and weariness, studied him for a long, aching silence. "You defy not only your peers," she said, "but the order upon which our kingdom stands." He met her gaze without faltering. "Then perhaps the order should learn what it is built upon." The Queen turned away, her gloved hand resting on the arm of her chair. "What would you have me do, Duke? Rewrite the law for your sentiment?" "No," he said softly. "Only see her as I do." Eliza's breath caught. For one fleeting moment, there was nothing between them but truth, the kind too raw for words. But society, cruel and ever watchful, would not be swayed by sincerity. A murmur began to rise, a judgment already forming. The Duke's defiance had sealed their ruin. Then came the sharp report of thunder outside, rolling through the chamber like fate itself. The candles flickered. The Queen's voice, when it came, was low, deliberate. "You have both disgraced your stations. The Tun will not forgive. The Court will not forget. And yet," she paused, eyes narrowing, "England owes you, Duke, for Waterloo. The crown cannot strip a hero without losing its own face." Her gaze shifted to Eliza, colder now. "But you, Lady Harcourt, will bear exile. You are to leave London under watch, until such time as your name no longer darkens our doors." The words fell like an executioner's blade. Eliza felt the air leave her lungs. Her knees wavered, though she did not fall. The Duke moved to speak, but the Queen lifted a hand. "And you, your Grace, shall remain where you belong, in service to your duty. The scandal will fade, as all do, if left to silence." Silence. The cruelest mercy of all. Eliza turned to him, her voice barely more than breath. "You must not speak again. It will only worsen your fate." "My fate is already tied to yours," he whispered back. Guards approached, but neither moved. For a moment, time itself seemed to hesitate. Then, before the watching court, before nobles who would later call it madness, the Duke stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice carrying through the hall, "if it is exile she must bear, then let me share her road." The Queen's hand clenched on her armrest. "You would abandon your post? Your title? Your seat in Parliament?" "I would abandon all but honor," he said. "And she is my honor." A stunned hush followed. Even the courtiers, drunk on scandal, could not breathe. The Queen rose, slowly, impossibly regal. "You would trade your world for a fallen woman?" He inclined his head. "I would trade the world itself if it meant she might rise again." Her lips parted, whether in fury or wonder, none could tell. Then she said, almost to herself, "Then so be it." The decree came not as thunder, but as quiet doom. The Duke of Wexford was to resign his military command, relinquish his place at court, and surrender his estates for a period of 10 years. Lady Eliza was to leave England within the fortnight, her movements monitored by the Crown's discretion. As they were led from the hall, the murmurs began anew, some scandalized, others strangely moved. The tongue would feast on this tale for years. The Duke who defied a queen for love. Outside, beneath a grey, weeping sky, they paused at the foot of the palace steps. The carriages waited like black coffins. Eliza turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You should not have done it." He smiled faintly. "My dear, it was done the moment I saw you." Her tears came then, unbidden. "We have lost everything." He reached out, taking her trembling hand. "Then we begin again, with nothing but what is true." The rain began to fall harder, soaking through velvet and lace. No one spoke. No one dared. For in that moment, amid the ruin of all they had known, something sacred bloomed, a quiet, relentless freedom. Their hands remained clasped as the carriages rolled forward, vanishing into the mist. Behind them, the city whispered of disgrace. Before them, the world waited, vast, uncertain, and untamed. But as London faded into shadow, a single candle still burned in a high window of the palace. The Queen, alone in her chamber, watched the departing figures with something that might have been sorrow, or memory. Her voice, soft and unreadable, broke the silence. "Love is the only rebellion that endures," she said. And far down the road, the Duke of Wexford turned once more, as if he had heard her. The storm swallowed him whole, leaving only the echo of her words, and the promise that love, defied and unbroken, would outlast the world that condemned it.